Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and follow Insight Global for more in-depth global insights and analysis. The recent immigration raid in the U.S. state of Georgia, where more than 300 South Korean citizens were detained at a Hyundai plant, has triggered a crisis that goes far beyond one corporate facility. What initially looked like a single law enforcement operation is rapidly evolving into a broader challenge for South Korean corporations, U.S. trade policy, and even global economic stability. Last week, the final flights carrying deported Hyundai workers landed in Seoul. The images of their return quickly went viral across international media, sparking outrage in South Korea. For millions of citizens, it was a startling moment of realization. Even multinational titans like Hyundai are vulnerable to the unpredictability of the American bureaucratic system. According to reports from Yonhap news agency, citing government insiders, major South Korean conglomerates, including Hyundai, Samsung Electronics, LG, and SK Hynix, are now considering scaling back their U.S. operations. Some are actively exploring plans to relocate production facilities to China and Southeast Asia. These corporations, which play a critical role in the global automotive and microelectronics markets, see America as increasingly toxic for long-term investment. Analysts from the Financial Times emphasize that this is not a rash or emotional response to the Georgia raid. Instead, it reflects a larger re-evaluation of the U.S. economic environment, one now defined by unpredictable tariffs, mounting regulatory pressure on foreign companies, and tightening immigration laws. For corporations reliant on tens of thousands of immigrant workers, such volatility poses unacceptable risks. Sources close to Hyundai's leadership have hinted at a dramatic plan, a gradual reduction of nearly 40% of its U.S. operations over the next 3 years. China, with its robust incentives and stable policy environment, is the top candidate for this massive shift. A senior Samsung executive, speaking anonymously to the Korea Herald, summed up the mood. The United States is no longer a predictable market. Every month brings new rules that put major projects at risk. China, by contrast, offers stability, government support, and clear long-term opportunities. If conditions remain the same, we will have no choice but to adjust. Economists are warning that these decisions could mark a turning point for the global economy. At the start of the 21st century, the U.S. was the premier destination for foreign direct investment. But today, the tide is shifting. A recent report from the Korea International Trade Association issued a stark warning: the American market is losing its reputation as a safe haven. Political agendas and internal divisions are transforming it into a source of instability. The backlash in South Korea has been fierce. Labor unions, particularly the Korean Metal Workers Union, which represents tens of thousands of Hyundai and Kia employees, declared they would not allow workers to be sent to the U.S. under the risk of raids and deportations. Demonstrations erupted in Seoul, with protesters demanding that the government protect citizens abroad and reconsider its economic partnership with Washington. Influential newspapers such as Hankyoreh described the Georgia raid as a public humiliation of an ally and a direct challenge to the foundations of the U.S.-Korea alliance. Washington, however, has stood firm. Officials from Immigration and Customs Enforcement insisted that the raid was purely a law enforcement matter, stressing that no one, not even global corporations, is above the law. Yet many experts argue that such rhetoric only deepens mistrust, particularly given that the White House had previously pushed Hyundai, Samsung, and others to invest billions in the U.S. market to create jobs. Now, those same companies feel penalized rather than protected. The Wall Street Journal noted that Seoul is learning a harsh lesson: strategic alliances do not necessarily translate into economic security. Meanwhile, Beijing is seizing the moment. China is presenting itself as the stable alternative, offering cheap labor, tax incentives, subsidies for green energy projects, and direct support for industries like batteries and semiconductors. Even more significant is China's role as South Korea's largest consumer market, a stark contrast to the US, where Hyundai vehicles and Samsung electronics face steep competition and mounting political pressure. According to Insider Asia, provincial governments in China, including Jiangsu, Guangdong, and Shandong, have already initiated discussions with Hyundai and LG executives. They are offering unprecedented packages, reimbursement of factory construction costs, discounted electricity, tax holidays, and even direct investment in research labs. These incentives could fundamentally reshape where Asia's corporate giants place their future bets. Global markets are already responding. Over the last 2 weeks, Hyundai shares on the Seoul exchange rose more than 7%, while Samsung Electronics gained 5%. Investors appear to view this shift not as a setback, but as a new opportunity for growth in more favorable environments. But in the US, the fallout could be severe. States like Georgia, Alabama, and Texas, regions that had aggressively courted South Korean investment, now face the potential loss of tens of thousands of jobs. Local governors have issued urgent warnings about the catastrophic impact this would have on their economies. CNN has reported that the White House convened emergency meetings with Congress and the Commerce Department to discuss countermeasures, including new tax incentives and streamlined visa policies. Yet many analysts doubt these efforts can reverse the deeper erosion of trust. The shockwaves are not limited to Korea. In Japan, major corporations such as Toyota and Sony are closely watching events unfold, fearing they may be the next to face U.S. policy pressures. The Nikkei reported growing distrust within Japanese business circles, with strong calls for diversifying investments and strengthening trade with China and ASEAN. Across Europe, reactions have also been sharp. Germany's Handelsblatt warned that the Hyundai scandal has made German carmakers wary of the American market. Meanwhile, France's Le Monde described Washington's approach as self-destructive, claiming it is driving Asian partners directly into China's embrace. Geopolitically, the implications are profound. China is actively pushing for greater Asian industrial integration, urging South Korea, Japan, and ASEAN nations to establish supply chains independent of U.S. influence. Beijing's Global Times bluntly stated that America's heavy-handed policies are compelling its allies to shed dependency and build a new economic power base in Asia. In Seoul, officials remain cautious in their statements, but the tone of media coverage and expert commentary is unmistakable. The U.S. is no longer viewed as an unquestionable partner. Should South Korean corporations follow through with their relocation plans, historians may look back on the autumn of 2025 as the moment when the Washington-Seoul alliance began to falter under the weight of its own contradictions. Thanks for watching. If you found this analysis helpful, be sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and follow Insight Global for more deep dive reports and global updates.